My entry into the police force and politics had exactly the same premise, the same principle, the same ideal of change. I was elected in 2018, and the first time I didn't even imagine being a politician.
First, Bolsonaro personally convinced me to take on this curious story of a political career. How was it? I was at the fire station here in Sao Paulo, at the Casa Verde fire station, located on Ponte do Limão. And then one day some politicians who were police officers approached me, like Colonel Telhada, like the late Major Olimpio, and invited me, but I always declined. No, I want to stay in the police force and I want to become a colonel, anyway. Well, but then the population itself, followers on social media, said, no, you have to join, we need that process, that desire for political renewal. We have been following your upward trajectory naturally and I realize today, knowing you personally, that you are more mature. More restrained, I would say, because you have made very strong statements. I really did kill. You have to kill and now you have a different speech. Politics is taming you.
I think that is the case. I understand perfectly and it makes perfect sense. I made mistakes in the past, a young lieutenant in my early 20s, anyway, and I ended up saying, especially in an audio of mine that was leaked, that it was a restricted group there. And in the context there was that some police officers were transferred from the route because they ended up getting involved in confrontations. As I mentioned, the person who least wants there to be a confrontation in Sao Paulo is me, because I will have one of my police officers at imminent risk of death there. So, but at that time I admitted that I was wrong, that I had said something stupid. I was disciplined by the police for that, anyway. And of course, logically, 10 years from now or even more we have evolved, without a doubt. A few weeks ago, last week or the week before, the event where Guilherme Derrite joined the PP ended up being interpreted as a launch of Governor Tarcísio de Freitas' campaign for the presidency of the possible campaign. Did you have this feeling, you who were there, this feeling of an irresistible wave, or are you in the press talking too much? I see that Governor Tarcísio de Freitas has a very technical attitude. He is a very prepared person. It is an honor to work with Governor Tarcísio de Freitas. But, to be quite honest, because I work with the governor every day, the governor has no intention of running for president. And the affiliation ceremony there, I was very happy because it was very prestigious, like, the biggest leaders, the national presidents of the center-right parties, everyone present, but it was really with the objective of confirming this possible pre-candidacy of mine for the Senate. Politics is a cloud, right? Every hour at the moment the cloud is pointing to Brasilia for you, right? Yes, I have to go back to Brasilia, right? For next year's term. Now, there was a reaction to that event by supporters of Bolsonaro, who thought that Bolsonaro was not mentioned enough by Tarcísio, by you, that you are a hard base to please. Did you forget to mention him enough? What happened? I don't think so. Well, what happens is that in every political group there is some dispute for space. It's natural in politics, right? Well, but I made a point of mentioning President Bolsonaro's name, of thanking Valdemar da Costa Neto, national president of the place, because the first person to be consulted so that I could return to the Progressistas was precisely President Bolsonaro. When Senator Círio Nogueira came to talk to me, I said, look, President, I am very pleased to return to Círio Nogueira, who is the president of the Progressive Party, especially with the goal of getting a renewal in the Senate and making my candidacy viable. Now, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, has been cited as an inspiring example, especially from the right, who put, if I'm not mistaken, 1.6% of the population in jail, in a country with 6 million inhabitants, 6,300,000 inhabitants. Can this experience inspire Brazil, or do you think Bukele is some kind of example for Brazil? I wouldn't say example, but what I would say, and I even said at a conference I attended in Brasilia recently, is that there are lessons we can learn. Do you know why? Because we are talking about a country that was once the most violent country in the world, which had a homicide rate per 100,000 inhabitants of over 100, 109, 112. Every 100,000 inhabitants. He reduced it to a little less than 30. Remember that there are states here in Brazil that have more than 50. And he reduced the last census, if I'm not mistaken, to 1.9 per 100,000 inhabitants. Better than Eastern European countries that are extremely safe, right? That's the point. I'm not saying that I agree with what was done, because I don't even have legitimacy, I don't know what really led to this whole process, but that we have lessons to be learned. Or at least that we have to look at this case and understand it and bring it into our reality for a continental country with more than 200 million inhabitants, with each state there with its own characteristics. Without a doubt, I think we have lessons to be learned. The first quarter of this year brought good indicators in your area in the state of São Paulo. Homicides fell, a national trend, robberies also decreased, but thefts in the capital are at the highest level in the historical series. Here's a curious case, theft.
And a man broke into the condominium where the Secretary of Public Security here in São Paulo lives and stole a car. This news is featured on G1. Let's check it out together here. Report by Abrão Cruz. The condominium where Secretary Guilherme Derrite lives is in Lapa, in the west side of the capital. Secretary Guilherme, was he very unlucky in choosing the address or was it a provocation? Did you find out what happened?
We found out, he
first went to congratulate the civil police for having taken the case. But something curious, right? He didn't know I was a resident. I try to keep an extremely discreet life. He lives in a residential condominium, buildings, apartments, even for security reasons, but he had already robbed 3 other condominiums in the area. So, the civil police were already there with the investigation advanced to arrest this individual. Now, what is curious is that this was not the case, right, of our friend who reported it, but part of the press attributed the responsibility to me. The company that takes care of the condominium security is a company private. Since I can't take a military police vehicle, if I did that, it would be dishonest on my part to take care of my personal safety. We have to learn a lot from a theory that has been widely studied around the world, which is the broken windows theory, applied by Rudolph Giuliani in New York. In short, we have to punish the smallest of crimes to prevent the biggest from happening. I'm not saying that anyone who steals a cookie from a supermarket should be imprisoned for 20 years, but this individual is a repeat offender. Today, the biggest scourge of public safety, what causes insecurity in Brazil, is precisely impunity, criminal recidivism. We've already arrested Bial here in São Paulo 30 times, the same criminal for a serious crime, the crime of robbery. He had already been convicted. He had 99 years in prison to serve. In 2015, he received a humanitarian pardon, because according to his lawyer he needed treatment, but he wasn't sick. Our disease today is impunity. It's the rework that the police do. It does.
This comes to mind now. It reminds me of an answer you gave to Minister Lewandowski, right? Lewandowski said that the police learn badly and then the justice system releases them, because that's a saying in Brazil. The police learn a lot and the justice system releases them even more. But I think that this is one. First, the minister is completely wrong. He apologized. He retracted his statement, anyway. But what we need to promote in Brazil is the reform of the criminal justice system. That's what moves me as a proposal, as an ideal to continue in political life. What would be the central points of this reform?
I'll talk about 2 situations. First, the custody hearing. We arrested 4 kidnappers here in São Paulo at the end of last year who held a 75-year-old couple captive for 9 hours. The military police approached one of these 4, a man and a woman. They saw that they had a bank card belonging to the victims, and took them to the civil police. The civil police is continuing the investigation, everything to be a perfect occurrence. If it weren't for the custody hearing, the judiciary releasing the 4 kidnappers. Only he did not release the 4 because one was already wanted by the justice system for another crime he had committed. With what justification? That the woman, the kidnapper, said she had been assaulted by the police officer. Detail: the 4 underwent a forensic examination and nothing was found, not even a bruise, no injury. In other words, the kidnapper's word ended up being worth more than the police officer's word and they were released. I'm talking about the custody hearing. We have to review who has access to the custody hearing. In my opinion, anyone who committed a crime like kidnapping would no longer have the right. He is an extremely dangerous criminal to society. Repeat offenders also have access to it. Crimes of similar nature cannot have access to the custody hearing. Another point, progression of the sentence-serving regime. Without a doubt, most of the Brazilian population saw the cowardice of the murder, of the robbery that occurred against the cyclist Vier Medrado here in Parque do Povo in São Paulo. Let's go. A month after the investigations, the brilliant work of the civil police of São Paulo, we got to the person who ordered the crime, Sudna, who lived in the Paraisópolis community. She was a real gang leader. She encouraged these robberies when she was arrested, 3 illegal firearms, a fake delivery bag that they also used to commit the crimes. In other words, she encouraged, She had a criminal network that encouraged criminals to commit these crimes. But she has already been arrested by the police 3 times. The last time she was arrested, before this one, she had been arrested for illegal possession of weapons, criminal organization and receiving stolen goods. So, in this case, the entire criminal justice system worked. The police, the public prosecutor's office filed a complaint. The judiciary convicted her. She was sentenced to 10 years and 2 months in prison in 2022. That is, until 2032 she would have been under sentence of freedom, if it weren't for the progression of the regime. 2 years later she was on the streets promoting a gigantic criminal network.
Returning to her administration in the Secretariat, the good things that happen are your credit, the bad things that happen also go to your account. The case of Ryan, a 4-year-old boy who died from a police bullet in Baixada Santista during a police operation. Did you classify the reaction of a deputy as cheap victimhood? Did you lack a little empathy at that moment? No, because it was taken out of context. The deputy of the staff in the Legislative Assembly, she accused me and the police as if the police officer arrived there in the operation. I want to kill a 4-year-old child or if he was following my order. The secretary ordered the police officer to shoot a 4-year-old child. That's absurd, but the police ombudsman at the time, Claudio da Silva, classified the case. The objective was absurd. How can we explain the absurdity of the death of a child to the mother? That's when we have to contextualize what happened that day. First, we have to say that we deeply, deeply regret the death of a child. It is an irreparable pain for the family, but it is the sad reality that our country is experiencing, with an undeclared urban war in many centers, even more so in Baixada Santista, which was chaos when we took over the administration. The police officers were on their way to the end of their shift when they were shot. The police car, the one in which the police officers were going, was shot at and there was a confrontation, an exchange of gunfire. The police officer was trying to defend himself and shoot the bandit who was also shooting at him. And then the police officer found out, according to the expert, the bullet hit the ground, went up and hit the boy who was playing in the street. An extremely regrettable and sad fact. Obviously, it is a moment of irreparable pain for the family. There is no comparison, but for the police officer as well. What is the psychological state of affairs? Going back to the beginning of our conversation, the police officer who is in this situation will carry this pain for the rest of his life. We are all extremely sad about this, without a doubt. Now, both you and Governor Tarsis have already been radically against the chambers and have changed your minds. What do you think? What motivated this change of opinion? Mainly the exercise of the function. When I criticized the use of cameras, I had a vision as a federal deputy that this hindered the work of the police, inhibited the action of the police. And when I took over the Public Security Secretariat, we had a little over 8,000 cameras in operation. We increased it to 10,125. The contract provided for up to 10,125, but only 8,000 were in operation. And we saw a window of opportunity to change the camera's functionalities. I completely changed my opinion regarding the cameras. Body cameras. In the bush. Honestly, do you dare to talk on your cell phone on the streets of Sao Paulo? Because of fear? Because of the risk?
Man, everyone has people who walk around with 2 cell phones to give to criminals. That's absurd. As a manager, I am constantly searching for them. We have an operation here called Big Mobile. What do we attack? Every network lists cell phone robberies and thefts, because if someone is stealing, there is someone making money selling them, clandestinely, so there's no point in just arresting the criminal. And, by the way, there are 2 problems. Remember when I mentioned recidivism? From January 2023 to May 2025, we have already arrested more than 430,000 criminals in Sao Paulo. So, speaking of Sao Paulo, we have a prison population, 170,000 serving sentences in closed regimes, around 30,000 also in semi-open regimes. We have already arrested more than double the prison population. Hey Dorito, why are we in the Brazilian Switzerland then? Because no one is arrested in Brazil. That's why we need to reform the criminal justice system. You praise the emptying of Cracolândia in downtown Sao Paulo, but we noticed a dispersion to other regions. What has happened in other governments? What gives you the confidence to believe that this will be a lasting action? It gives me a lot of confidence, Bial, because we did what has never been done before. What we did in Cracolândia from the beginning of the administration, we aimed to qualify all those people who were there. Our names and CPF numbers are not numbers for us, they are people, they are human beings. And there we had 3 types of people, basically drug dealers, drug users, drug addicts and homeless people. And something that is not seen with the naked eye, was not seen, is the presence of organized crime and how it sustained itself, this criminal ecosystem, which, how it favored organized crime. And DNR, which is the specialized narcotics department of the civil police, carried out a year of investigation and launched the TAL operation. That was the big move, the big difference. Then came the operation together with the public prosecutor's office called Health and Dignity, the two major operations. But the investigation of TAL operation, we managed to close 78 hotels in the Cracolandia region. More than the court order to close the hotels, we understood a triple function of these hotels. First, to store drugs, to provide a space for the user to consume the drugs. And the third and most important point, the CNPJ of these hotels laundered money. Drug trafficking in Cracolandia. So we discovered this criminal ecosystem, the hotels were closed and Cracolandia stopped being an attractive place for organized crime. That's why it was empty. And why, I assure you, is it not a, we are not spreading. Because along with this public security action, the state government launched the crack cocaine treatment hub. So, thousands of people were served. All this multidisciplinary work together has been happening at the same time for over 2 years. So it's natural that out of 100 people in the Cracolandia region, if we go there now, there are no more than 50, 60 people. The environment is not favorable.